What if I told you that the sermon you hear on Sunday in church may not be written by the person preaching it? The use of artificial intelligence, specifically generative AI, in ministry is one of the hotly debated topics in Christian ministry across the country and the world. So what is the role of AI in ministry? Should there be one? What is and isn't a pastor's responsibility? We're joined by Joe Hensler, lead pastor of Faith Church in Allentown, Pennsylvania, to talk about those questions and more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. What if you found out that the sermon you heard in church on a Sunday wasn't actually written by the person preaching it? And I don't mean when a music artist takes a song from another music artist with permission. I mean, what if you found out that the entire sermon you heard was written by artificial intelligence? We're continuing a series on generative artificial intelligence and its role in various areas of our society and our workplaces. And today we're focused in on the question of what is the role of generative AI in ministry. And as with all the other episodes, we're talking specifically about generative AI, not artificial intelligence such as spell check, which we highly recommend that all pastors and everyone else use, but generative AI, where it creates the content for you. I'm joined today by lead pastor of Faith Church in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Joe Hensler. Pastor Joe, welcome to Face the Issues.
Hey, thanks for having me. What a fun topic to talk about today.
I so appreciate you coming in, and we've kind of had this conversation in passing, over the years. And AI, it's such it's not new, but it's now kind of catching on mainstream, and that includes in the church. And we hear of pastors who swear by it, and I'm using AI to write sermons, and others saying I'm using it to tweak sermons, or I'm using it for research. Just from your experience, what you've seen, whether it's in the church you pastor or as you talk to pastors from across the country, what have you seen? How is AI being used in ministry at the moment?
Yeah, I think the obvious use is in sermon or curriculum teaching development, right? So that's the sort of very normal, people talk about that. I think the other ways it's being used is in production of music and lyrics. It's being used in social media and how a church could be engaging with the culture in social media and social media posts. It's being used in translation, which is super fascinating to see how it could be used to help people understand a different language. So I think in a variety of ways, but like every part of society, churches deal with finance, insurance, business, all this normal business type things that anyone would deal with. So there's uses just in all the different forms of just life of a church. So variety of ways.
Just like any nonprofit does marketing, a church is a nonprofit that has programs and branding and things like that needs to take care of as well.
Yep, and people are using it, leveraging it to help them.
Let's talk about the benefits of AI. I think there's people, often if they're in one camp or another, they're kind of like all in or all out, right? So AI is horrible, we should never touch it, there's no use for it. AI is great, it should run everything. But there's generally, I think most people are gonna say there's benefits to it, and then there's things we gotta be really careful about. Have you seen AI as a positive in any place in ministry? And where has it really helped enhance the purpose of doing ministry?
Well, one thing that's worth considering maybe at a next level higher is for Gen Z and younger, this is their native world. So as people in ministry, to just ignore it or to sidestep it or to deny its place in society or to demonize it, that alone is going to cause problems for a native generation where they've not grown up in any other world but this being a part of it. So sort of as someone who wants to engage the culture, part of the most important thing is to embrace the fact that it's here and not be afraid and figure out wise ways to use it and to understand it without being behind and demonize it, because you're just losing your influence opportunities. Obviously, we have to be wise about what we use it for and how we use it, but I think it has a place. It's just now determining where and when and how to use it.
What's so interesting about how you answered that is usually, I think, like you talk to business people about AI, and they usually immediately talk about the algorithms way beyond the chat GPT. It writes a script, but it can sort through data, the ability to create algorithms, the ability to enhance graphics. And you went right to a human element, which is usually the other end of it, where people say sometimes AI, and we'll get to that, does AI miss a human element? But you went right to a human element that AI can actually help us enhance our human connection. I find that so fascinating. One, it says a lot to you as a minister and kind of the goal of what you're trying to do as a minister. But I find that so fascinating that you're seeing AI as potentially a tool that can actually help us connect better with humans as opposed to distance us from them.
For sure. I mean, and the church has often taken any new thing and demonize it, right? So, but the churches and the ministries that are using technology and embracing it for what it can do, not only for what it can do in producing ministry opportunities, but also because of the native people that this is norm. You have the potential of disregarding that. Like, no, how do we do this? But I'm nervous. I mean, I've been approached by companies who will give me data on the people that call Faith Church home and help me produce my sermons by telling me these are the search items from the zip codes that you serve. And if you know this is going to influence how your ability to teach them and engage them. Like, there's some pretty powerful ways it could be used for good and not so good, as we all know.
Well, let me ask about the drawbacks. I mean, even as you say that, I think as somebody who does so much work in politics, we've been doing this politically for a while, and does that translate into ministry? Is that how we should approach ministry? What drawbacks have you seen or do you fear come with the use of AI in ministry?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually think politics and ministry have a lot in common, right? So perception, exactly. Perception is reality in both.
Yep.
And so it's interesting that both the potential to use it for good and the potential to use it for evil or for not good. So the drawbacks are really strong in how you can take something so powerful and misuse it to harvest information about people in your congregation. Companies that were willing to do that seems really unethical to me. It's very dangerous. I think the danger of obviously being inauthentic, and we could talk about the ethics of this, but just there's something about being in ministry that requires authenticity. And when you use something for AI to produce certain things that are inauthentic, what does that say to the people you're trying to engage?
So it's interesting because earlier we mentioned AI can be used to better create human connection, but the flip side of it is that AI can also, essentially, I don't want to say it, it's almost, it can be used as deception.
Oh yeah.
Almost. How thin is that line? I know I've heard you talk a lot, leadership classes about strengths and shadows.
Yep.
Is this what we're looking at, and how thin is that line or how close are we on the edge?
I think it's, in our society today, it's really, really close. If you got sick, Sam, and I offered to bring you a meal, and I went to Mr. Bill's, a local place, and bought you a pie, pot pie, and brought it to you and pretended like I made it for you, versus just telling you, hey, I bought this at Mr. Bill's. So I think inherent to every ministry setting is authenticity. And so if you run the line of using something, if you call it out and say, hey, I use this tool to help me, no harm, no foul. But if you're unwilling to do that, I brought you a meal from Mr. Bill's and I'm gonna pretend like I made that, like that undermines all my authenticity and my integrity to you as a person. And to do that in ministry, to me, feels like a pretty significant foul.
Even, I think, outside of ministry, I don't think humans respond well to that. I think about politicians who steal another candidate's story and sell it as their own. And when it's uncovered, it's the end of a campaign.
Absolutely. And same in ministry. There is no tolerance for that line to be broken, and yet people are running up to it all the time. And so something that we get so helpful can also be so dangerous. And how do we, to me, what I want to do is find the wisdom of how to use it effectively, how to not just throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, but also to maintain ethics and authenticity. You have opportunity there. There is a way to walk that balance.
Yeah. I want to get into that in our next segment, but let's close this segment with kind of the preface question to that. And I think you hinted at this earlier. Is AI something that is here to stay? Is this an inevitable reality that we need to wrestle with? Does it essentially change the landscape of ministry in the way that we have to wrestle with it? Or is it one of those passing fads that will be gone here, that will be here today and gone tomorrow?
I think it's here to stay and here to embrace. I mean, it would be like asking the question, is the iPhone or smartphones here to stay? Or are they and so many ministries have played the card in the early days of technology of saying, whether it's television or radio, like, hey, we're not going to deal with this. This is no. How do we embrace it and use what could be used for evil, use it for good to serve people?
Yeah. Wow. We're going to go to the break. When we come back, I want to pick up right there and dive into how we do that and what are some of the wisdoms and the ethical questions that get involved with this.
Great.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Watch Lighthouse TV wherever you go. Available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can view our in-house studio productions on demand or watch what's on the station right now with our 24/7 live stream. Search Lighthouse TV online on your streaming device or go to our website for more information. Visit lighthousetv.org to stay connected. There you can find out what's currently on the air and coming up, how to watch in your area on cable, satellite, broadcast, or streaming devices. Watch past programs or our live stream. Follow us on social media and learn more about the station, our hosts, and our programming. Lighthouse TV, positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Joe, thanks again for joining us and helping us. This is it's a new-ish issue, but it's such an important one. And I wanted to pick up where we left off and talk about that shepherding of AI. Where's the wisdom in it? Where are the ethical lines? Let's start with the elephant in the room and probably a quicker response from you, but I'm guessing it might not be, but this use of generative AI to draft sermons, to actually preach through AI. And even before ChatGPT kind of became mainstream, I mean, there are organizations that do this, essentially ghostwrite sermons and send them out. And there's a heavy debate about the ethics of this. I'm curious as to your thoughts about this, whether it's using someone else to do the drafting or AI, and not in the sense of if you came down with COVID on Sunday morning, someone else takes that manuscript and preaches it. Like, that's, to your point, still authentic and honest, but the complete someone else drafted this. I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
I mean, maybe at a very basic level, if you're concerned about telling someone that you used a tool, if you have to pretend in any aspect of life that this is mine, and you're unwilling to say, I use this, I learned this, I grew from this, someone else taught me this. So if you would have the courage to say, ChatGPT wrote my sermon for, but the moment you move into secrecy and deception, or you have to push something down, I mean, doesn't that tell you something to me? So I think all of us have a conscience that would tell us, hey, I'm squashing and holding something down, and I'm unwilling to say to you that I used a tool for this, or I learned this from so-and-so. So if I would have a ghostwriter and I would say, let me introduce you to my ghostwriter, his name is, or her name is, but if you can't do that, that says to me ethically, you got something going on that's saying, there's a deception there.
Can I ask about your process in sermon writing? There's a sense of which it's more than writing. I mean, for me, having written sermons under your leadership, but also having written academic papers, there's a very different approach to it. Is there like the Holy Spirit's presence in sermon writing, or a supernatural part of sermon writing that use or heavily relying on AI misses?
I mean, I think I could take that there's so many different layers to that question, Sam. But at the end of the day, like what is preaching? Preaching is like heralding. You're proclaiming something. So that's where I think in a lot of ways politics and religion are similar, because you're heralding and trying to teach, but also herald something, proclaiming something of good news, right? And so, and politicians do this all the time. They're trying to proclaim good news. If that's inauthentic, and as a Bible teacher, I'm proclaiming good news. If that's inauthentic, so part of it is, it comes from inside me. When I'm opening my Bible and trying to teach and explain, it's from inside me. And as a Christian, I believe God lives inside me. And so a part of it is, as the Spirit of God is at work in my life, as I'm reading a text that's inspired, and I'm, with God's help, connecting all those together to an audience that I care deeply about, that artificial intelligence doesn't know, but I do. So you bring all of those things together, that I am connected with a God of the universe. His text is inspired, and I'm serving a group of people I care deeply about that a ghostwriter doesn't even know. How does that authenticity come together? So for me, it starts with, I want to have an experience with my God and His authentic word, and bring that to the people I care deeply about, to hopefully encourage them with good news.
So if you're sidestepping that, then you're kind of sidestepping the purpose of why you're preaching.
I think, and here's maybe one of my concerns with it, is I think in many nonprofits, including churches, many shepherds are pressed for time and energy. And so it's always, when you're pressed and you're stressed and you care deeply about something in someone and want to offer them something, it's tempting to cheat. It's tempting to shortcut the circuit in the process. Shortcutting the process is going to lead to, I think, damage. And so that's where I would be cautious about it, because I would really say it's unethical to use AI to generate a sermon and then pretend like it's mine, because I'm short-circuiting a process that God wants to work in me and in the people that I'm serving. So that I feel bad, because I think sometimes people feel like they're caught. And so Sunday's coming and I got to have something to say. So it's like, I got to write a paper. So I got to figure out how to, plagiarize. Like, I want to do well. It might be a good intention. Dangerous.
So this leads me to the next question. So a lot of law firms are actually being sued right now for doing this, being pressed on time, pro bono case, drafting up. And how they're getting caught is that AI is generating things that look like Supreme Court cases, but they don't exist. So they're citing case law that's just never happened. And so there's the question about using AI for research. There are inaccuracies. I mean, we make fun of, Gemini AI said, if you can't get Rice Krispie treats to stick, add Elmer's glue. It'll stick. That's but is there but then there's those who kind of use it to tweak things, and I mean, because that's not as inauthentic, because you're not drafting the whole thing and selling it to an audience saying it's mine. But there's also a danger if you don't know what's happening, if you're not the expert, if you don't know what that time in Scripture was like, that you're preaching something that's not true. Where does a preacher walk that line?
If you're called by God to be in ministry, there's an equipping that takes place as a part of your, just like learning in any field. There's an equipping and learning. Sometimes that comes through school. Sometimes it comes through private study. There's an equipping that's necessary to be effective at your trade. If you short circuit that process and jump over hurdles to get there, it's going to be evident, and you're not going to know what you talk about, which is very different than someone who's studied and knows. So I get to a text like, for instance, I might get to a text like Acts chapter 6. I've studied Acts chapter 6. I've studied theology. I've been equipped for my field, but I forgot, okay, what's the difference between a Grecian Jew and a non-Grecian Jew? I might put that into Google and learn and be like, oh yeah, now I remember that. But that's not short-circuiting my education and my equipping. That might be a hack that helps me move a little bit faster, but I know the difference and I know my sources, right? I think there might be a difference in research where you have no idea what you're talking about and you're trying to portray like you do, versus little hacks that we all use when we Google something, where we could go deep into something and spend 30 minutes in a really thick text, but we kind of want a shortcut for a second to find out, okay, yeah, the Grecian Jews, they just didn't speak Hebrew the same way, right? So it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that, great.
Yeah. I say the same thing to the undergrads I teach. Like at your stage when you're a freshman, a sophomore in college, you probably shouldn't be using generative AI for anything because you're in the process of learning. You're learning how to write, you're learning how to research. And if all you're doing is typing it into a piece of artificial intelligence, you're actually not growing. But then there's a whole nother side of like in business, if you're a business pro and you need something checked or something tweaked, you know what you're doing. You are the expert, and now you're using the tools in the hands of the expert.
Yeah, that I think it's true in ministry. It's like, don't short circuit the growth that's going to take place while you learn your theology, while you learn your congregation. If you cheat that, it's going to have detrimental effects, and people will see beyond it at some point in some way. But if you use things to help you in the process because you already know, there could be effective ways to use it.
I hate asking about a test. I think we try to do tests for everything now. But is there some standard or some way people in ministry should think about when it's appropriate and not appropriate to use AI, and like toward what? I mean, you mentioned earlier about like translations, and I know there's ministries that pastor preaches in one language and they can put in. And you don't need 50 translators. You have these hearing devices that can translate it. That's generative artificial intelligence, and yet I don't know of many people, if anyone, that will rail against that in the way they might be upset if a pastor shows up with a sermon he didn't write.
Yeah.
So how does a ministry leader shepherd those differences?
I mean, I think again, it's like how authentic. So when we've used some of it for translation at our church, and we tell everyone, right? And we proof check it. We're checking it. So for translation, it's like we translated something from English to Spanish. We had Spanish speakers check to see if it was authentic after it was done, and we told everyone we did this.
Yeah.
Right? It's like if you can't come clean. And you're hiding, you there's no way in any ministry that that's okay, right? So I think use that authenticity, honesty thing, integrity, right? So I don't know. To me, that's the starting point of this. I'm not sure if that's answered your question.
Yeah.
Or not.
So and I guess in the last question I'll ask you in this segment, when you've been in ministry a long time, when you think about the purpose of what you do. I know the church has like a purpose statement, vision statement, but does Joe Henssler have a purpose statement of why he's in ministry, and because I feel like a lot of what you're saying is, does the use of AI line into what you're trying to do in ministry? So what if I asked what is Joe Henssler's purpose statement? What would you say?
I mean, at a very broad range, it's how do I do the most good for the most people? So that drives me to try to honor God and care for and serve people. So I'm always thinking about that. But that could also cause me to take shortcuts. Like that would be easy to use that. So a huge part of who I am and what I want to do is be authentic in how I do that, not fake. I think people have a BS detector in any field, any field, in any circumstance. And so if you're inauthentic, people can smell it a mile away. So how do I do the most good for the most people in an authentic way that honors God and honors people and treat them with the respect that they're due?
I think that's great advice. Well, thanks. We'll cut the break, so don't go away. And you at home, don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Watch Lighthouse TV wherever you go. Available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can view our in-house studio productions on demand, or watch what's on the station right now with our 24/7 live stream. Search Lighthouse TV online on your streaming device, or go to our website, lighthousetv.org, for more information. Lighthouse TV, positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Joe, thank you again for joining us. On this show, we always want to close by really getting to know our guests away from the issues and the talking points. And so you've been in ministry for quite some time. I've known you since you came to Faith Church as a high school pastor. I was unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for me, I was out of high school by then. And you've been lead pastor of this church since I think 2009. Around then, you were in ministry before that. What's your why for life, for ministry? What gets Joe Hensler out of bed every morning to do what he does?
Yeah, appreciate that question. I mean, huge part of it is, again, how do I do the most good for the most people? And I just think a huge part of doing the most good for the most people is what's missing in our world. And so the three things that we even raised our sons to think about and to process is the world is missing love, the world is missing laughter, and the world is missing leadership. And everything I do falls into one of those things. How can I love people and show the world love in ways that maybe is different than what they expect? And that's deeply rooted in my faith, because I look at what Christ did and how much love he showed everyone, but also laughter. Like, we're just missing so much laughter. So in the ministry setting that we're in, as you know, anybody at Faith Church, we laugh and try to bring joy into this world, and there's enough to cry about. So as we love people, there's so much to cry about, but we're gonna try to laugh, and what our world desperately needs is leadership. And so how do we take any situation, circumstance, and offer leadership to help people take one step forward, to do something better, to serve, but to provide leadership in a world that desperately seems like it's wandering. So if you added love and laughter and leadership in any of the spaces I am, that's kind of what, that's kind of what I do and who I am. And it's fun to see my sons embrace that and grow. And so I really love that they're doing that in their world as well.
Can I ask you why? And I think everyone hears that agrees, right? To your point, I mean, we cry about a lot of things in this world, but we don't. I mean, laughter. So I mean, it's why we pay money to go laugh, right? Nobody pays money to go to a funeral, but we pay money to go laugh at comedy shows. Why? I mean, love. We all speak to that, and leadership. I mean, but why is it so lacking in this world?
Laughter?
Any of them.
I mean, yeah, while they're all that, but I think in the world, everybody's just taking things too seriously, and especially in Christianity. My goodness. We need, sometimes Christians are the people that it's like the only time you see them smile is if you turn them upside down, right? And it's like, my goodness, we have so much to be thankful for, so much to rejoice over. And so if we can laugh, find reasons to laugh, look at life, it's missing because everybody's either taking things too seriously, they're in sorrow or depression and discouragement. We should be leading the way as followers of Christ in laughter. So I'm not sure fully how it's, but we're gonna laugh, right? And you know, if you've been around me, you've been at Faith Church, it's like we laugh. And I think, how do we reproduce that? We talk about it more and say, what does the world need? So for Sam Chen and Face the Issues, bring some more laughter here. If we could bring some laughter everywhere we go, man, what a better world we would have.
Well, we'll have to come back on so we can do more laughing.
I'll do a stand-up show for you.
That sounds good. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your insights on this topic and just for the example that you set in all of this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. That is our show for this evening. I want to thank Joe Hensler for joining us and for breaking down this issue. I want to thank each of you for joining us as well. We hope to see you again right back here next week. And until then, my name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.